Now if we can move on and welcome Mrs. Mary Jean St Clair, granddaughter of Alice Hargreaves, who has kindly travelled from Gloucestershire and agreed to speak to us tonight.
I'm really pleased to be here tonight, and I haven't been here for a very long time, and it's really fine. Thank you very much for asking me. When my parents sold Cuffnells, they kept some of the houses and cottages around the park, and that's two of the houses, unfortunately I can't remember the names, but there are two houses round Bank which were built for Alice's sons, and they never lived in them because they were both killed in the First World War, and the only child of hers that was left was Carroll, who was my father. And from him I inherited one of the cottages, which when my sons were small, we all came to Toponica Cottage, which was one we inherited, for our summer holidays. It was all a bit different then, because it was about 40 years ago or more, and Lyndhurst has changed quite a bit, as you can imagine, since those days. I haven't been to Bank again yet, but I think Bank perhaps has stayed much the same. We used to go to the beach at Muddyford, and we used to just park on the side and go down to the beach, and it was all empty, and we could walk along the beach, and again, I'm sure that's probably changed. But anyway, the forest remains the same, whatever happens round it. My father sold Cuffnells just before the Town and Country Planning Act became law, so unfortunately it was pulled down. After, if it had been a year later, I think it would probably still be there. But on the other hand, it was in a pretty poor state, because the army had been there during the war, and I remember going there, being taken by my father to look round before it was sold, and there were huge mushrooms growing out of all the walls. The dry rot and the wet rot had taken over, and I think it would have been an unbelievable job to have ever restored it. I think we probably couldn't have done it anyway. I just remember going in through the front door, and there was a big hall, a staircase hall, with a beautiful staircase going up the side of it, and then you went through that, and there was a little anteroom with a big table in the middle of it, and on that table, for anybody to look at and touch and pick up, was the original manuscript copy of Alice, which is now in the British Museum, which was, when my grandfather died, it was sold to pay death duties, and it was sold for £15,000, which in those days was something incredible. I mean, it was the most that any book had ever fetched, apparently. Anyway, I still had it. I still got, by the way, I still got the table that the manuscript used to sit on is still in my house. I still use it now. I also remember there was a big orangery at the end of the house, which had, in the old days, all sorts of exotic plants growing in it, including oranges, and also the wilderness, which was at the end by the side of the house, which my great-grandfather was very proud of. He was a very keen gardener, and it was full of all sorts of rhododendrons, azaleas, and I think 2 big California redwoods. I don't know if they're still there. And my grandmother Alice, she led a quiet life when she lived at Lyndhurst. She brought up 3 sons, and she took part in the normal country activities in the local community, except when the other Alice intervened, and she went to London for a reception or a dinner, and then she went to America to receive a doctorate from Columbia University. When she got very old, I think she got rather tired of being Alice in Wonderland, because there were so many calls, so many letters people used to write to her, and questions that she was asked, and she didn't want to seem ungrateful, but she said, "I'm not ungrateful, but I do get so tired." By the way, Alice was not the little blonde girl that we all think of as Alice. She was a small, dark child. She had dark hair and a fringe. Actually, I believe, I was told that her parents thought it was not quite right for her to appear as an illustration in a book, and so they asked Tenniel if he would make her look completely different, which he did, with long blonde hair. I think she also would have been amazed at the incredible continuing interest, tremendous interest, that people still have in Alice. Nearly 30 years after she died, I think she would have been really happy to know that people in Lyndhurst particularly still remembered her and remembered Alice. And I believe also that Alice is also the 3rd most quoted book in the world. So that was something she would have been proud of too, I'm sure. Anyway, thank you all for having me, and I hope you all have a lovely evening.